tell you today,
No.
the reval is going to be above or below it.
Be good.
Morning, everyone. We're going to call to order our March 7th, 2026 Finance and Budget Committee meeting. It's 11:18 a.m. First order action is seeking approval of last meeting minutes. Somebody want to make a motion for that? First by Supervisor Runyon and second by Supervisor Bruno. Any comments or corrections to the meetings? I'll call the question. All in favor of approving last meeting's minutes, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? That carries. Next, privilege of the floor and public comment. Treasurer Norton.
Good morning and thank you. I'm a little slow to the game on the pickup of fully appreciating the committee structure change. I'm used to reporting out the budget variance report to the finance committee. And I will do whatever we need to do go forward, but I think at a minimum, you guys should at least hear the executive summary because I think it's important. But I also talked to Haley and Nate and we'll figure out what we want to do go forward. The general fund balance, as you know, is gonna, it's in flux until March 31st. And then it's even in flux through April, but just, we will look at that very closely. And if I can get you a better idea of where we are, because right now we're $1.5 million under. So just wanted to give you that heads up. The ACH fraud update, multiple county departments and leadership in partnership with the Risk and Safety Committee are working together to formalize best practice policies and procedures. Actually, we've already completed it, as well as all required controls to mitigate the risk of something like this happening again. I believe it's on the agenda. Sales tax, we had a 5.6% increase January over January. We had a similar increase last year, January 24 over January 25. What we're going to try to give you this year, we're going to try to figure out what the lift in revenue sales tax is from the STR sales tax. It's very convoluted, but we're going to try to get that to you. Interest income, we talked in the DPW about the $12 million. We are putting that in our highest, it's called an ICS income, the sweep account, where we'll get 3.52% interest. So until we start deleting that or start depleting that 12 million, we're going to get about 360 annually on that. We'll earn that. That can be used for indebtedness. There's also a significant decrease in our interest and earnings on our regular investments. And that is because we have we have two bonds that are now in fixed income, and they are reported on a semi-annual or annual basis. So you're going to see the pickup, just not right now. It's a timing issue. We talked about the culverts, 85%. Mr. Hajo said that no problem. We would meet that 85% compliance requirement to allocate and or spend down the $12 million culvert bond by November 27th. Occupancy tax, we're short 300,000 in short-term rentals. I think the only headline there is we have a lot of completeness and accuracy concerns with the reporting from the platforms and a lot of confusion with what the platforms are telling our folks. You guys know about the Sheriff's Corrective Division, 81% decrease. That's because federal inmate intake has dropped significantly due to more jail space available in other counties, especially Albany. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Anything from supervisors before we keep going? Next is to a request for transfer funds as attached for our approval.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The journal report of transfers, there's really not much on there. There's a $7,500 transaction at DPW that did not need to occur, so that's going to be corrected. There's also a $5,000 transfer to cover the cost of salting equipment at the municipal center. I know we've had.
You're on number 2, we're on number 1.
I'm fine with that, thank you.
No, it's just the report.
So if you look at item 1 in your packets, it does need committee approval. $50 from the county clerk. 30,000 from IT. Make a motion to approve it from Supervisor Mayday. Well, Second by Supervisor Stroud.
Okay.
Discussion, Supervisor Stroud.
Yeah, also listed under item 1, and this comes from the Department of Public Works. And there is 6, 9, 11. We're moving them out of Horicon Avenue, Diamond Point Road and Stone and so forth over to County Route 78. Are all those overages? And are needed for repairs down County 78? I'm not sure I understand that.
You want to speak? It's money from last fiscal year that's carrying over to this fiscal year is my understanding.
So it is extra money from the projects from not just 25. There's a couple 24 projects in there as well. The 13th Lake Road project that money is put into is where we put the budgeted money from when we did the budget for 25. All that money goes into 13th Lake Road, which was the last project of last year. In another resolution, which I think it's part of this packet, the money is then distributed out to every single one of the road projects that we have moving forward. So there's no work being done on 13th Lake. That's last year's project, but that's a placeholder for all the funding.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Thank you. We have a first and a second. Any other discussion? Number 1. Call the question. All in favor of committee's approval for the transfer of funds, please say aye. Any opposed? And that carries into the journal report from the county administrator. This is not for approval or vote, just informational purposes.
Are there any questions to what the county administrator prematurely reported earlier?
No.
Thank you.
Carrying to number 3. If somebody wanted to consider a bundle of 3A and 3B. 3A, this comes from our assigned council administrator Pulaski. Request to amend the 2026 budget in the amount of $49,545.32 to reflect receipt of funding, and then the same $49,037.33 to reflect receipt of funding also from the State Division of Criminal Justice. But first by Supervisor Conover, second by Supervisor Mayday. Any discussion on those? Proposals? I'll call the question. All in favor of approving 3A and B, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? 4 comes from Economic Development. We do have our county planner here. It's authorizing an agreement with the Northern Borders Regional Commission for grant funding is related to our fish hatchery. It does involve about a $33,000 cash contribution, local share, in addition to some in-kind local share as well. Somebody want to bring this to the floor? Supervisor Bruno on the first, Supervisor Cressida on the second. Discussion about this. Call the question. All in favor of approving item number 4, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That carries. Into 5, request to amend the budget this year in the amount of $500 to reflect receipt of funding for our public health department. We want to make a motion by Supervisor Mayday, Supervisor Bruno. Any discussion on this? Call the question. All in favor of 5A approval, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That carries. Into 5B, request to amend the budget in the amount of $779.69 to carry over unused infrastructure grant funding. Somebody want to make a motion for this? Supervisor Runyon. Supervisor Bruno. Any discussion on 5B? Call the question. All in favor of approving 5B, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Number 6 from DSS, request to amend the budget this year, $47,422 to reflect receipt of additional funding from the New York State Office of Temporary and Disability Assistance. What do you want to make a motion? Supervisor Runyon, Supervisor Mayday. Discussion on 6. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Carries. Into number 7, referrals from Public Works. 7A, Request to amend the 2026 budget in the amount of $1,250 to reflect receipt of additional tax from the town of Bolton that was not budgeted for. Somebody want to make a motion for this? Supervisor Mayday on the first, Supervisor Bruno on the second. Discussion on 7A. Call the question. All in favor of approving 7A, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? And that carries into 7B. Request to amend the 2026 Warren County budget in the amount of $5,000 to reflect receipt of a donation received from the Friends of Up Beyond a Farm. Supervisor Bruno wants to make a motion. Supervisor Stroud on the second. Any discussion on 7B? Call the question. All in favor of 7B approval, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That carries. 7C's got a little bit of meat on it, so request to approve submission of a grant application to the New York State DOT Alternatives Program, the TAP program. And this is with regard to our bikeway, the Warren County Bike Path along Country Club Road in Queensbury. $7 million project with a 20% local share. It's about $1.5 million. Superintendent Hajos is here. And our county planner, maybe. Good. And so 7C in your packets. It was referred to us from Public Works. Somebody want to make a motion to bring this to the floor before we Supervisor Runyon on the first, Supervisor Stroud on the second, and we'll open up for discussion comments from Superintendent Hajos.
First thing I'd like to do is can we change that to ratify the actions of the chairman of the board for that resolution? Because this application needs to be in by March 12th and we won't be into the board meeting. This will be submitted before the board meeting.
You want to make the first and second, you guys okay with the amendment? That
Fine with that.
Supervisor Runyon?
So this is, as most of you are aware of our bike path, it runs along, there's a section of it that runs along Country Club Road. Where it comes out on the Country Club Road, I think Country Club Road is speed limit on there right now is 45 miles per hour in that area. For a Class A rider, and John could talk to that, certainly fine for them to ride along the bike or along the Club Road, that area. But for children or families to be able to ride through there is probably not the best condition for them to be riding in. This leads us up to, along that road up to Blind Rock and Round Pond intersection and follows Round Pond around the corner to Birdsall, and then it goes up Birdsall and connects back into the path again. So the project itself, there's two parts of this project. The first part for this section of Country Club Road would be to put the bike path along the east side of Country Club Road until we get to the intersection of Round Pond and Blind Rock. Then when we hit Round Pond, we would cross over Country Club and be on the south side of Round Pond until we get around the corner to just about where the cart path is for the golf carts crosses at the country club. And then we would go back across the road to where the gravel parking lot is that would lead us into Birdsall Road. So that's one section, and that would certainly improve. This would be a kind of off the beaten path. It would be 12 foot of pavement outside the existing roadway to allow, more, I guess, pedestrian and bicyclist friendly accommodations for people to ride through that area as opposed to being on the road. The amount of that, I'm not 100% the cost of that one, but we also lumped this in with the improvement of 24 crossings on the bike path on roadways throughout the city and the town, both the town of Lake George and the town of Queensbury. This would bring the standards to all those intersection crossings up to the Empire State Development has a new kind of, not new, it's several years old now, kind of regulations on how crossing should be. As most of you know, we have bollards on ours, and this would be removing those bollards, but putting in other kind of, I guess I want to say deterrent, so that somebody's still not going straight across the road, but it would certainly improve the facilities as the way they stand today along those intersections. The caveat to this was we would need a local match, as Supervisor Etu said, of almost $1.5 million. We talked about a portion of this on the intersections would fall on the bike path, so that would be an A code money, and the remainder of it along Country Club Road would be D fund money. With that being said, this does not say that we have to do this project. Within the resolution, we wrote it such as that it says this request is to authorize the superintendent of public works to submit the final TAP grant application for the bikeway project and for the Board of Supervisors to express its willingness to provide the required local match from a fund source to be determined and subject to future budgetary appropriations. So if we do get the grant in the future and we don't feel that it's something that we can fund, then we won't accept the grant.
Questions for the superintendent?
No.
That last cross, I think it's the last one. Just at the, where the golf carts across from hole 1 to hole 2. Where does that bike path currently travel along there?
Along the shoulder of the road.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm a little concerned, and I'm sure you're addressing it about the, with respect to speed limit horizontal sight distance with respect to that crossing, and the necessary.
Yeah, and I say in the vicinity where the golf carts are, but it would be farther down on the straightaway where they would come across to the gravel parking lot, not actually on the corner where the golf carts. But we would certainly, as part of this project, if we were able to fund it and go forward with it, is we'd have all the proper advanced signage, and similar to what the golf course has for their flashing lights and the flashing beacons, we would do something there as well as on the crosswalk.
Okay, thank you.
And my point was that if we did get the TAP funding, which is the Transportational Alternative Program, almost 6 million would come from federal funding to do this project. So I look at it as something good.
Yeah, it's an 80-20.
So there would be 3 crossings if you're coming.
Yeah.
So you would-
cross to the east side, you go up to Round Pond, cross back to the south side of Round Pond, and then cross at the.
So the one crossing that you have would be coming out of the bike path and going across to the east side of the road. And of course, if anybody asks why there's such a cost to this project, is there's a significant amount of right of way to be acquired through this area. So when we get up to the intersection of Blind Rock and Round Pond, you're at the intersection. That's an easy crossing at that intersection, because you're right at the stop controlled intersection of that crossing. And then as you came down around the corner, where the golf carts cross now, it would put you back across the road and towards where the gravel parking lot is in that area.
Do you envision it's a median, like a small grass strip that keeps the 12 feet of new asphalt separate from?
Correct. There'd be a separation between the edge of pavement and this new path.
Professor Stroh?
And that can be done in multiple ways. They recommend a 4-foot, it could be grass separating the 12-foot right of way, but it doesn't have to be 4 foot. And you can put a guardrail or guide rail up. And you don't need that 4 foot of separation. So there are different ways of doing this. And, but it's for public safety, and it certainly is needed in this particular area.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the 4 foot is guidance. They're not gonna hold your feet to the fire, it's guidance. With the thing we always have to consider with this is we looked at it as how much right away are we going to acquire? And that's where it comes into a significant cost for this project.
Are you able to bifurcate the cost of the 24 crossing improvements from this?
Yes.
So like 6 million, 1 million or something?
I guess if I look at it, because I think what we looked at as the A code amount would be about 400,000. So multiply that into the the 20, that would have been a 20% of the crossings would be the 400,000, and then the 1 million would be for the bike path.
Supervisor Stroh.
Now, Kevin, if we did some in-kind, we could use it against that,
We certainly could.
Yeah.
We certainly could. And again, as I read the bottom portion of that resolution, if we don't feel at the time that our budget's where we need it to be able to do this local match, then we don't do the project.
Yeah, it's a lot of money that would be very hard to find. I mean, my 8-year-old was on the bike path this year and it's a very valid safety concern, always has been for decades.
Why not?
and then if you consider, I mean, for every dollar we invest in this bikeway, I'm sure the return is much more. I mean, it certainly is a huge asset to tourism in this area.
Could come from Octax.
Strike that from him. Not necessarily all of it, but any amount would be helpful. That's a decision we can make at the time. So.
Any other discussion? I'm not against voting for it myself today. It's just, I just don't know where the money would eventually come from. But if we are resolving to just apply for it and acknowledging it's gonna be a tough ask, if ever awarded, palatable for me.
And just to clarify, you're voting to ratify what would be the actions of the chairman next week. Because the board won't approve it until after the deadline to get it submitted.
So the request is to submit it.
Yes.
Other discussion?
Just, Mr. Chairman, I mean, I think looking at, it's in our best interest in terms of upgrading our infrastructure to, if we were to be awarded almost $6 million, I think we would. Yeah. Put our thinking caps on and try to make it happen. That's tremendous leverage.
Yeah. Well, as Supervisor Strauss stated, it's a big asset, respect to tourism. Attraction thereof.
It's a tourist attraction.
I don't know if it's a tourist attraction either, but it
Bike
is a significant.
Bike,
So-
Stretch.
biking?
Tourist attraction.
Supervisor Stroh.
It's been a while since I read the Warren County Bikeway Modernization and Connectivity Project. But I think part of it included improving the safety of the Bloody Pond Route 9 intersection where that horrible accident took place in front of the dinosaur place or whatever it is now. I think it speaks to improving that to make it safer.
That's accurate, Kevin.
But I'm going from that.
So, yeah, so as part of the application, we use that bikeway report to be able to submit for the work that we're proposing in here.
You don't agree that bicycling, that's big tourist attraction?
To a very small degree. I
Well,
think the lake, I think
Daddy
the
was
boats, I
studying
don't know if you
it.
pack up and come.
Just one at a time.
Okay.
One at a time, I was asking. Any other discussion? No. All in favor of approving 7C as laid out in discussion, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? That carries unanimously. Going into 7D. Request to establish road projects for 2026 and authorizing transfer of funds for the same as you see in 7D.
I'll just add that this is, so the money that we just spoke about, which was the transfer into 13th Lake Road. This is the transfer out to all the capital or all the road projects for this year. With that being said, I misspoke during committee. When we talked about this, when I talked about it in committee, I said that we were budgeted for 5.1 million. We actually weren't budgeted for 5.1 million. We were budgeted for 4.8. And as all of you recall, Frank Thomas had said last year that I could come back after the first of the year and ask for funding out of the county fund balance, which would be $1.5 million to fund the remainder of my projects, is we actually submitted in budget for $6.3 million. So we are looking at the bids. Certainly some of the bids that came in well. So we think we will come back and maybe not ask for $1.5 million out of that fund balance, but we will ask for, and it's not the general fund balance, it's the county road fund balance. And we will probably ask for maybe $1.1 million out of that moving forward, but we're looking at the projects that we kind of deferred when we said we only had $4.8 million.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to clarify, we're talking about taking the money out of the county road project reserve, not the general fund.
Yeah, that's what I just, yep.
We want to make a motion for 7D. Supervisor Runyon on the first, Supervisor Stroud on the second. My math says 5.267 million total.
That's correct. And that was some of the money, as you see, that we transferred from the old projects into that project.
Other discussion on 7D. Call the question. All in favor of approving 7D, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? That carries into 7E. Request to increase capital project number H401 Sagamore Road retaining wall in the amount of $75,000. So we want to make a motion to bring this to the floor. Supervisor Strauss, Supervisor Runyon on the second. Any discussion on 7E? Supervisor Bruno.
The reason for this?
There is, so as you all are aware, we had the collapse of that retaining wall quite some time ago. We had bid it once. The first bid that we received on this was significant. And it would have significantly impacted the Sagamore resort. So we went back with our engineers, did a redesign. They came up with a better solution. As the contractor started work, they had realized that there was a significant amount of infiltration through the existing kind of stone
Can I
laid up.
Can I interrupt Chair for one moment? I'm not sure how much detail you're gonna go into, but this might be a matter for executive session. Okay,
No,
make sure there's nothing.
no, there's not.
Okay.
No, there's not. So there was a significant amount of infiltration through the existing stone, laid up round stone that was basically the foundation for the road, as well as the wall on the edge of the road. So with that infiltration, the contractor could not obtain a dry site, basically dewatering to porous concrete. So he switched gears and had to come up with doing a what they call a tremie pour, which is basically pouring within the water. And as they're pouring the concrete, they're forcing the water out, which was an increase to our inspection, which was an increase to extra costs that we were going to pay him to do that work. So that's where we're at, and that's where this numbers come about. So, and we have money in D9950, 910 transfers to capital projects to pay for this cost.
Other discussion? Call the question. All in favor of approving 7E, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Carry into 8A. Request from IT to appropriate $100,000, $100,700 from budget code 88950 to various department budget codes to cover the cost of purchasing new computers and related equipment and software. Just we want to make a motion to bring that to the Supervisor Conover and Supervisor Cressida on the second. Discussion on 8A. Just added it up. It is correct. Call the question. All in favor of approving 8A, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Going into 8B from the Treasurer's Office. Request to amend the 2026 budget in the amount of $35,414.76 to record 2027 mental health office lease. Somebody want to make a motion to bring this? This by Supervisor Conover, second by Supervisor Mayday. Any discussion on this? Call the question. All in favor of approving 8B, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Going into 8, that carries. Going into 8C, request to appropriate $14,258.58 related to Warren County Industrial Park water sewer taxes. Also discussed in support services. Treasurer's office is now fielding those invoices. It will be the only invoice expected for this for the fiscal calendar year. Somebody want to make a motion on 8C? Supervisor Runyon, Supervisor Mayday on the second. Discussion on 8C. Call the question. All in favor of approving 8C, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Carries into 9A. Request to adopt updated Warren County electronic wire transfers and e-banking policy as recommended by the Warren County Risk and Safety Committee and repealing, replacing any prior versions adopted. Somebody want to make a motion to bring that to the floor? Supervisor Runyon, Supervisor Presido on the second. The treasurer's asked if we could add the words in partnership with the treasurer's office. And I forgot where in the policy that is. So if the treasurer could just point out where that is for the committee's consideration.
And I do want the, if I could, Chair,
Yep.
let the committee know that this policy took hours and hours and multiple meetings with a subgroup from the Risk and Safety Committee to get what you see before you. All of those meetings included the county treasurer. The county treasurer's recommendations have been included throughout the process where there could be consensus agreement. What you have in front of you is what was finally approved by the committee. And I would encourage you not to make any changes to it at this point because it would no longer reflect what the Risk and Safety Committee had. And I'm not sure that the request had to do with this policy. I think it may have had to do with 9C.
I thought we were on 9.
9A.
Sorry, my bad.
I'm sorry, I was at the wrong one. So,
Be with Larry.
okay. 9A. E-banking policy, yes, many meetings. I'm very in favor of it. With separation of duties and checks and balances.
Can I just make one more comment?
Yep.
I would be negligent if I did not thank and commend the chair of this committee, Nate Etu, who came and sat with us and reviewed with us. Really, truly, without his involvement, we would not have reached a consensus between the committee and the treasurer's office. And personally and professionally, I just wanted to publicly thank him for taking on that role and responsibility.
Discussion on the policy. Supervisor Stroh.
It certainly seems to divide up the responsibilities on page 7 of the contract. The County Board of Supervisors shall be responsible for authorizing contractual relationships with the county banking and financial institution. And then it says that the Finance Committee chairperson and a partnership with the county treasurer and Risk and Safety Committee, again, will have their oversight. And then the county attorney has its oversight. And then you have the county auditor, and again, with their responsibilities. And then you have the county departments and their responsibilities. Quite a gauntlet, I would say, and I assume that's a good thing.
If I could, that was really the core of what we were looking to achieve, or the committee was looking to achieve, is to make sure that checks and balances were in place for everybody. There were common practices the county used, but they weren't necessarily written down. There may have been some general understandings, whether they were accurate or not, is a question that's open. But what this policy does is it takes those questions and removes them. It makes it very clear. The other, I mean, every single department that you see listed in here, I'm thankful for the role that they're agreeing to play. Their department has approved what's in this policy. One in particular stands out to me because they've accepted a huge responsibility that they've never had before, and that's the county purchasing department. Julie Butler, as the purchasing agent, has seen the need, accepted the responsibility, and has agreed that her department will have, and the word is sole responsibility for establishing and maintaining all vendor records in the county's financial management system. That means if there's a change in payment, there's an ACH change or banking change, it has to go through the purchasing department before another department can use that information. And no other department will have access or the ability to touch and change what is the responsibility of the purchasing department. So it's really it's layered in a way that it's never been layered before. And that's why it took so long and so many meetings and such a dedication from every individual on the committee that participated in this, to include the treasurer and the treasurer's office, which participated in the meetings and the process to kind of get to this final version. And just because I'm on a roll and I'll say it and then I hopefully won't have to speak anymore. Section 5 on scope. You see the items listed in bold A through K. That is what resolution request 9C is referring to. Those are going to be very sensitive internal processes that we're asking the Board of Supervisors to direct the Risk and Safety Committee to create. We don't want them published. We don't want them approved by the Board of Supervisors, because how we deal with cash receipts and disbursements and bank account reconciliations, lock boxes and credit cards, those are all going to be very sensitive, confidential information. But it's another layer that will cover this. This policy is kind of the broad umbrella. Those policies will be, those processes rather, will be the detail that falls under this policy. And collectively, hopefully definitely by the end of 2026, if not sooner, you'll have this mass of policy and procedure, which can then also be a best practice for the municipalities going forward, should they choose to review and use it once it's put together by the committee. That's it.
Supervisor Stroh.
Do we have the people who have been given responsibility for oversight of this policy a statement where they've read the policy, understand the policy, and acknowledge it's signed such?
There's
Yeah, I didn't see it anywhere in here.
when you look at sections 9 and 10, there's a training and awareness provision and a compliance provision. I think it's a really good question because that's how we typically deal with most of our policies. This policy is a little different. And the reason it's different is because state law mandates that the county cannot engage in e-banking unless the Board of Supervisors, which governs the county's e-banking requirements, approves the use of e-banking and provides the policy that'll be applied. So what this document is the Board of Supervisors laying out the requirements of whom is responsible for what. But it also then becomes the foundation for the chair of the board for the first time to be authorized by the Board of Supervisors to enter into the actual online banking agreements with Arrow Bank. And in doing that, that then puts in motion a set of assignments that would occur. So the chairman of the board, once this is approved and he's authorized, would sign the agreements for online banking and then designate who the primary administrator is going to be. We always, every day of the week, 365 a year, believe that the only person who should be designated as the primary administrator is the elected county treasurer under our structure of government. And then it officially falls to the treasurer to assign within her department the individuals using this policy and the protocol in here, how access will occur, who has access, and who in her department has that ability to do certain functions. At the same time, it's going to flow over the county clerk's office, the district attorney's office, and the sheriff's office, because in this process, the committee became aware that each elected official in those departments has some form of banking accounts under their control, which may not have necessarily been known or at least appreciated countywide prior to the process of putting this policy together. So I don't know that there's any separate acknowledgement that's necessary, because it falls under the structure of the departments and the department heads who are listed in this policy to do what's required and that they're being directed to do by the Board of Supervisors in approving this policy.
Well, it'd just be another layer of assurance that, yeah, I've read and understood this, here I've signed it. So if something again should happen, heaven forbid, nothing will happen, go in the future, especially with a policy like this, but some kind of acknowledgement that they've read this and understand it, but, okay.
It's not an idea that I'm opposed for. It's not something the committee considered. I'm certain that it's something that could be added either informally or through a revision in the future on the policy. But truly, and I apologize to some degree, because we've been in a holding pattern with our bank. Because we've identified an issue with our current accounts, but have not been able to cure it. Because we cannot cure it until this policy is in place, if that makes sense.
Other committee members feel like we want to add one sentence that requires parties in this to sign an acknowledgement as we do for many other policies and submit it.
That could be done right in section 11.
I think it should be.
Marilyn, if you want to make a comment, that'd be appreciated.
The policy, the county's red flags identity prevention program, and it also connects to the computer use policy.
Yep.
So as those, we would use the same rollout. We're working with the deputy administrator, Tammy De Lorenzo, to roll those out. They are rolled out online, and as they are given to all employees, there's an electronic acknowledgement. They've received it, they've read it, and we're doing that electronically. So you're not seeing that on a paper perspective. It's all electronic, particularly.
Although I just want to add, and I that's absolutely correct. I'm not sure it's fair to make all of our employees read and acknowledge this particular policy, because it's a tough one. There's a lot in here, as you know, because I know you read it. So there may be a way to kind of work through that. More targeted as far as an acknowledgement.
Other committee discussion on 9A.
Just,
Supervisor Crown,
I could just, maybe walk an example through. So I'm a successful bidder on a county project. And I wish to be paid electronically. So at some point in the process, I'm going to make application to purchasing department to establish the principal contact, the routing numbers, the bank numbers, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Moreover, I'm the contractor now, should I wish to change that in the future, I'm going to have to go through the same type of formal process to change that. So that we have kind of, I guess you could say, a lockbox, if you will, on who we do our electronic payments with. It could be a supplier, but I'm using a contractor as an example. So the process, so I'll submit that claim on that project to, in this example, let's say the Department of Public Works, their engineers will review it. It'll go through the normal process. Maybe a progress payment is processed as an invoice. It comes through the process, and at some point, it's recognized that this is being paid electronically in this fashion as opposed to a hard check. In other words, at some point is, because you're gonna have contractors that are still gonna be paid with hard check, right? So at some point, it's gonna go left, and at some point, it's gonna go right. However, the payment, who gets that payment and how much is approved still goes through the normal conventional process of, in this example, of the department, the budget officer of that department, the engineer of that department in terms of evaluating the progress payments. They make sure that the WH 347s and all the appropriate materials attached. It's just that the contractor supplier is going, if they choose to elect to be paid electronically, are going to have to go through the purchasing department. And like I say, in a secure lockbox kind of fashion. And so at some point along the way, maybe even on the application, it's going to say how you wish to be paid. And if you want to be paid electronically, you got to go fill this form out. You've got to go to the purchasing department. Am I thinking this through correctly? I think maybe
I don't want,
maybe the administrator is
I don't want to, sign off on everything you just said, process-wise. I think when you think big picture, the big picture is historically, the departments have never, ever been responsible for the method of payment to a vendor,
right.
period.
That
End of story.
So there
Full stop.
will be need to be some administrative procedures put in place relative to the policy.
Yes, and that's
Okay.
what's in section 5 under scope. And that list from A to K, which is going to cover in much greater internal detail what internally happens.
Okay.
But big picture, there's multiple, like, right, I think in diagrams, there's multiple big circles of what's happened. There's the circle that's always happened and existed from departments to auditor. The departments, I'm not gonna go all the way back to the budget, but there's a budget. The budget provides funds. That funding can be spent by the department. The department spends that money, but through a vendor that's approved. That vendor submits invoices and it becomes a voucher. And it works through the department and it goes to the county auditor. Really, truly, nothing in that system that the county has always used is changing or being modified. The auditor is your auditor, each of you individually and collectively as the Board of Supervisors. You all don't have to come in and look through every single request for payment that comes through the county. You're responsible for it all, but that's why you have the county auditor in place to do that job for you in your names as the Board of Supervisors. Okay, so when the county auditor finishes that process, the request is ready to be paid. I believe what the supervisor is referring to is more under section 7, vendor and payee management. It starts, I believe, on the bottom of page 10 and goes into page 11. It talks about how we onboard the vendor, how we make changes to a vendors information when there's a request. It also discusses employee direct deposits, which is another form of ACH that the county regularly uses. You know, there's these, broadly speaking, there's three buckets, maybe four buckets of ACH payments. Primarily, the conversation is about vendors, is about companies that we have contracts with who provide a service or a good and then require payment for that service or good. You know, we're not talking about the state agencies or even the electronic transfers that have historically occurred to town. Now, we're addressing those. We have plans of how to make all of that work better and more efficiently, how we protect our liability in it, but that's going to be more the second step of the banking agreements that we're going to enter into once this policy is approved. But again, this policy is the overarching umbrella for all of the e-banking that occurs here at the county. ACH is a portion of that, and a smaller portion of that is vendor payments. And that's really where the core of the focus was on in developing this policy, but it does include all of e-banking,
No, the
not
reason-
just that one.
I've been doing this a long time, and I think I have a very intimate understanding of the PR process and what the signatures mean in that whole process, the checks and the balances take place throughout that whole process. And I think you've answered my question. I mean, fundamentally, what's happening here is we're creating I'll use the word, a much more secure way of identifying who's receiving what under an electronic payment.
And it's more than just who's receiving what, it's how much as well. So you'll see when you look on page 11, it's a very, the committee did such detailed thought through this process. So in the generic procedures for electronic funds transfers, you see B, initiation, and then in bold, you see that there's some language about submitting receipts of a vendor's invoice within 30 days. And that reason is simple. There's going to be clear caps on what electronically the county's going to be able to do through a computer, right? Doesn't mean that you may not be able to go to the bank to do a certain transaction, but currently, for example, the county has told Arrow Bank that it's okay to authorize through the computer portal an electronic fund transfer up to $9 million. There is no way on this earth that we have a way to cover a $9 million transfer. The treasurer's office, the treasurer and the deputy treasurer specifically have been very engaged and helpful in having a series of discussions and understanding there's a risk in that number, 9 million. What's the reason for it? What are workarounds? The bank helped us tremendously with how do we bring that number down as far as we can without hamstringing and hampering the day-to-day activities that the treasurer's office must accomplish to pay our vendors, but at the same time, limiting that potential danger of exposure of such a large number for example, on a wire transfer. And we have an answer for that. And that's going to be part of the process that I'm not going to share in a public forum going forward. Hopefully on March 20th or immediately thereafter, once and if this policy is approved by the board. So there's really a tremendous amount of thought that the committee, the treasurer's office, the risk manager, the auditor, I mean, I don't want to just say individual departments because everybody really was deeply involved in trying to figure out what their needs are, what we need, what's alike that we may be able to work around, and how do we limit our exposure and how we're going to cover that going forward. So when there is if there is a worst case scenario, the exposure is one that can be managed or covered maybe through some supplemental insurance or a bond or some other means. I think I talked them to sleep.
No, I think you've answered my question. I think the security of the purchase and all of that is still well in place. This is simply a question, not simply a question, but how the payment's going to be made, what the process is gonna be for securing that payment is, what we're primarily talking about. So those departments are collecting all kinds of information, certified payrolls, and collecting information to certify the extent of the progress payment, the quality of the work, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That will continue as usual. What we're really focused on here is at some point is how that converts, the conventional system converts into an electronic payment system.
Other discussion on 9A from the committee? I'll call the question. All in favor of approving 9A, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? That carries. Into 9B, request to approve the updated Warren County Fiscal Approval Authority Management Policy as recommended by the Warren County Risk and Safety Committee. A motion to bring 9B to the floor. Supervisor Runyon, Supervisor Stroud on the second. Discussion on 9B. Supervisor Stroud.
Under procedures, number 4. It was a change. The department head's request to assign a department head designee. And it goes back, and I read the definition for the New World Fiscal Approval Authority. But giving this task to the Department of Information Technology is the appropriate way to go, and I'm looking for the rationale for that.
Man, the answer is absolutely it is. Absolutely it is. The Director of IT, under the computer use policy that the Board of Supervisors just passed at the last meeting, is, we kind of jokingly started calling him the master of the universe. He's in charge of the entire computer network, top to bottom, no questions asked. Generally speaking, there's been a concern that some departments, there's a perception that some departments have the authority or had the authority to be kind of like a gatekeeper into some systems. And that was a problem. Just the perception of that is a problem. By having the IT director in control of the access to this part of the computer system is very important, because it takes away any ability for someone to misperceive access. And by the same degree, you have one person that's not engaged in transactions in the system monitoring access. So it's a best practice because there's a control that's involved, because you don't have a department that works and makes changes in the system able to access that system to do things that they may not or should not necessarily have access to. So it's the only change in this policy that we're requesting, or that the committee is requesting be made, to ensure that, one, it lines up with the computer use policy, and two, it kind of goes to the supervisor from Bolton's question about controls. Because this then ensures that the database that governs our financial transactions is free and clear of any open questions. It would be very hard for someone to falsely cast a dispersion on one department or another about access to the system when those departments just don't have access to make the changes that need to be made so somebody can get into the system.
Yeah, so in brief, it'd be the IT department that recognizes the department head or designee as the person that has access.
and defines the scope of the access in the system, which is really crucial,
Okay,
is really crucial. Nobody will have more or less access than their position and title should have to perform the duties assigned.
okay, thank you.
All right, more discussion on 9B. All the questions, we're ready for it. All in favor of approving 9B, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That carries into 9C. Request to authorize a resolution directing the Warren County Risk and Safety Committee to prepare all necessary county financial policies and internal procedures as part of the county's risk and safety manual. Somebody want to bring this to the floor? Supervisor Runyon on the first. Supervisor Stroud on the second. Discussion on this. I would ask, I have spoken to the treasurer about it. She did ask if we go to 9C in our packet. Purpose of request, resolution directing the Risk and Safety Committee to prepare all necessary county and internal procedures as part of the county's risk and safety manual in partnership with the treasurer's office.
I would say resolution directing the risk and safety committee in partnership with the treasurer's office to prepare all necessary county finance policies. Again, we can align on that if that's not exactly Carolyn at the point.
Isn't the treasurer's office part of the risk and safety committee?
No,
No.
no,
Members of the.
no, they're not. They participate with when necessary.
I see. I see.
But that's a determination made by the committee. And at the end of the day, it's the committee that gives the final approval to the policy, not the treasurer's office. So for example, the two policies you just saw, there was definitely a search for consensus with the treasurer's office.
Mhm.
But hypothetically, if there was an inability for the committee to come to a consensus and agreement with the treasurer's office, you would have seen the Risk and Safety Committee's recommended policy and potentially a separate policy from the treasurer's office. But there's some desire to ensure the continuity and independence of the Risk and Safety Committee going forward. They're not gonna intentionally, my belief is they're not gonna exclude anybody. But by the same degree, they're not gonna hold up their best professional judgment on a policy because they cannot achieve consensus with someone they're supposed to be part of.
Other discussion? Call the question, all in favor of approving 9C as is, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That carries. We'll go back to number 4, please. The clerk of the board pointed out that we didn't complete the second part, which is determining the source of funding for the local share. The local share is more like 60,000, but it's been imputed, I think, about 25 or so to come from in kind, leaving a cash contribution local share of 32,920. And so the resolution request does include, give us the mandate of a request to determine that source of funding.
Contingent account,
Would come from the contingent,
federal general fund.
general fund, that's the.
Oh, they use contingent into that side, but that's.
So we could identify it now, and if it needed to change down the road, they could. So there's about 250,000 in there right now. And you said, clerk, that it would record the best procedures as new motion, not an amendment to the,
Yeah, I would make a new motion to designate the source.
and who was the first?
The original was Mr. Bruno and Mr. Percy.
To want to make a new resolution that includes right now the 32,920 coming from the contingent. Or any discussion on that? I'll call the question, all in favor of approving the agreement and using the contingent fund for 32,920, please say aye. Any opposed? And that carries. Moving into 10. Just approved in the last personnel meeting. Request to authorize temporary quarterly compensation, in the amount of $500 per quarter, not to exceed 5,000, although it should be 2,000, to a senior employment and training counselor to support data analyst goals. Somebody want to make a motion to bring this to the floor? Supervisor Runyon on the first, Supervisor Bruno on the second. Any discussion on this? Call the question. All in favor of approving 10, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Carries into A, and I wonder if we want to bundle A and B, just approved in the last personnel meeting too. Does somebody want to make a motion to move them as bundled? Supervisor Runyon on the first, Supervisor Cressida on the second. This is to create a new position, telecommunications analyst per diem, and delete telecommunications analyst full-time. Then create a new position in response to the office's needs of computer help desk tech, effective March 23rd, 2026. And this went through support services and then personnel. Somebody want to make a motion for that? Sorry, we already did. Yep. More discussion. Sorry. All in favor of approving A and B bundled together, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Those carry. Prepared PowerPoint to lead a discussion that I hope to have at the end of every meeting about our fiscal year 2027 budget. I think most have realized our current budget was a tough year and there's no reason to think next year wouldn't be tougher. And so it is tempted to wait for the county administrator because he wanted to be the one to, or I asked him to be the one to facilitate it. Sure.
Sure. I did. There's my alarm during it. With George all the way down to my pad.
We're gonna stop before the budget discussion, just open it up to public comment.
I should have said that I meant was, right?
I just want to talk about the 9,
That's a big.
the new policy. I want to thank the risk and assessment. Risk and safety, yeah. But there's a lot in there. I started reading it. There's a lot. And then at the very end, the chairman has to sign off on some of the stuff. So I'm asking everybody who's involved in this to make sure you do your jobs correctly before it's given to me to, or whoever the chairman of the board is, because there's an awful lot in there. There's a lot of steps being taken. I think we have an idea that some of the steps were missteps last time. Not really sure about that, but I don't want to put my name on anything that's not done properly. And there's multitude of departments and people that have to do their jobs correctly. So that's all I'm asking. And I appreciate all the work you put into it. But when I see the chairman of board, and very well cannot be me, but you have to put your name on some of this stuff. I want to make sure that everybody who's involved in it, make sure. I don't know every aspect of how county government runs according to, you know, the batches and who signs off and who changes this. And I've gotten a better understanding after this last couple of months. But any chairman has got to rely on the people who do the work and give it to them. And right now I'm comfortable. Anything I sign in the county attorney's office, I know has been well done, well vetted, and it's good. So I have to bring that up. There's a lot of that. I was reading through it, and some of it's the first time I've seen it. And that's all I'm going to say. I appreciate all that they did. And I think it's, you know, I think you've deviated and set it off enough to allow other people to do, but they have to do their jobs correctly. So before you'll see my name on it.
Thank you, Chairman. We have 10 to 15 slides. I think we can go through. They're pretty objective, just kind of setting the tone for the next several months. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I'll go through these as quickly as I can. Always, if you have questions, please interrupt. Let's go to the first. Basically, where we are is we know this is going to be a challenging budget year. We know it was tight going in. We busted the tax cap by $6 million. And we still have challenges with rising expenses. So we're gonna have to start paying attention. In discussions with the budget officer, we decided we need to start focusing on not just the 27 budget that we're going into, but it's time to look at start looking at 26 and see where we can make any adjustments or improvements to set ourselves up for a better 2027 budget. Next slide, please. So we have some fiscal constraints. We have to face facts. Sales tax has probably leveled off. It's going up just incrementally now. So we can't really rely on big sales tax bump at this point, we think, to help offset the challenges we're going to face. We don't believe it's practical for us to exceed the property tax cap for a third year in a row. So the tax cap is set at roughly around 2% each year. That gives us about $1.5 million over our estimate right now, over what our previous budget was. So we have about $1.5 million to possibly consider as flexibility without going over the tax cap going into 2027. But we're experiencing a lot of rising expenses. Medicaid, SNAP, HEAP, and one of our challenges, and NISAC's helping with, is the transfer of federal dollars that used to be sent and transferred down to counties are going to be less next year. We know that starting 1 October, when the fiscal year starts for the federal government, we're going to get less money filtered down from the federal government, and that's going to put stress on us. At the same time, when Kevin's sitting here, road projects cost, they just keep going up. The cost of all the materials we need to fix the roads more and more expensive each year. Go ahead.
With regard to, we'll just look it up here, the tax cap. It's been stated before that, and some of it's stated here. Big road project costs, they increase when that tax cap was initiated, so to speak. Things were different, costs were different. I mean, in other words, there's been discussion over whether that is practical at this point. So are we looking at that, or I'm not sure how that's orchestrated, any change to that or what have you, but I just want to bring it up. I don't know if it gets enough attention.
NISAC did make that a priority discussion for this year. They were told by the comptroller the tax cap will remain in place for 2027. The alternative they asked for was to let counties remove EMS cost from the tax cap. So if EMS costs, for example, are going up, if they're eliminated from tax cap, that gives you more flexibility. It looks like the state's not going to support that either as well. It appears to be stuck in committee. There was a bill put forward on it. You might have something, because Kevin was just at advocacy day yesterday.
Yeah. Real quick, because Dan Bruno was down there as well. So we met with our legislators yesterday. They had a big advocacy day rally that they have every year. It's the Sea of Orange that goes down there and asks for money. I gave an example when I met with the Department of Budget, the governor's office yesterday, that last year with the $50 million increase, we received $130,000 here at Warren County. That probably gets me 1 mile of road paved. With the $250 million ask that we're we're requesting. That would probably, if I use the percentages correctly, would probably give me about $875,000. That would either get me one full depth reconstruction type road, or it would get me, say, 6 to 7 miles of overlay type of road, which certainly helps. It's an improvement. Is it the end all be all? It's not. One of the things, and John can probably talk to this, and I'm sure it's part of his thing, is the Medicaid and Medicare increases that are going to be put on the county. The problem with my department, and John says as the costs go up, my department's not mandated. My roads aren't mandated like DSS or something like that. So the budget is normally look at DPW or look at the sheriff to take money away. I will tell you, we've already looked at next year's roads and we're probably close to $10 million for going into 27. So that's my 2 cents. If anybody has any questions about Advocacy Day and what indication that we got that we were going to get anything, we'll know when 3 people get in a room together and decide what they want to do. That's all I can say. Cool. Thanks, John.
Okay, next slide. Because this leads right into kind of what Kevin was saying. So, SNAP, HEAP, Medicaid costs are going to be shifted more to the county. And a key point on this is the second point, because I've had supervisors say, well, we'll reduce funding for those programs. No, we won't, unfortunately, because we don't have control over who's eligible for social programs. We have control to make sure that we have a responsibility to make sure those who are receiving the social program benefits are eligible for those. And you've heard about like SNAP, for example. We've talked a lot about that, but SNAP costs are being cut to states with a greater than 10% error rate. That's people receiving benefits who are not eligible. The state is at 12.7 with no expectations that they'll be able to get below 10%. And I've told you where most of those costs are coming from. They're in the 5 boroughs areas in New York City. Our error rate here in the county is 1.7%. So we have really good enforcement team. We've got really good people who are going out and verifying, but you're also going to hear that they're probably going to need more people in social services, even when I'm saying I want to look at positions, because they now have to almost quadruple the amount of face-to-face verification they have to do to make sure somebody maintains that eligibility. That was part of the Big Beautiful Bill Act that said you got to verify this on a quarterly basis. And previously we were able to do it by Zoom or by phone. Now we have to do it in face-to-face. It's going to take more counselors in social services to be able to do that, more caseworkers. Okay, let's go to the next, I think. As we look, these are all just pressures we're going to have to face. I did miss something on the last one. We expect starting 1 October, potentially, not saying we're accurate in this amount, but we could face an additional $1.8 million of federal funds that are not going to be transferred to this county. So our expenses for social programs could go up by 1.8 million starting 1 October, and we don't have that in the budget. Okay, so I'm not very good at moving these on my screen. Okay, so the bottom line is we need to start looking, and you know, Kevin said it, I'm pointing right at him, but we need to figure out concisely what services are mandatory versus discretionary. We have services that we have to do. We don't have any choice in that. A large part of our budget, if you look at our budget, if you take out salaries and mandated programs, we have about 18% of our budget that we can control. That's a $215 million. Everything else would be mandated. So it's just not much flexibility there, and we'll have to look through that. And so I have action items at the bottom of these slides now going forward, and I'm going to work with the department heads to identify mandatory and discretionary services. we already have a pretty good listing. But there's still a lot more clarification we want to add to that. With the note on it, it's not about service elimination, but we need to align services with our capacity. And
Chairman.
Yep.
You know, I think that this is a great step, and I think that I mean, we have, a $215 million budget. And the one thing that perhaps gonna be helpful going into this year to maybe the inflation rate being down lower compared to where it was a few years. But even if it's 2.8, 2.73%, that's 3% against $215 million. Right? Salaries, benefits, insurances, hospitalization, the cost of products and services, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I think that it would be good on the major game moving items to put together a little model, if you will, that shows that. And now the one thing that's really, at least my sense is, the one thing that's really helped us over the years has been we have done pretty well on the sales tax side. And we have had an expanding tax base. And those two things in particular have helped us keep our county tax rate is one of the lowest in the state. If the state of New York is not going to pass through that, in the example, 3% on its share of the budget, and if the sales tax levels off, and if the tax base levels off or has a slight increase, that arrow is only pointed at in one direction, and that's at the property tax. I mean, I think what I'm stating here is statistical fact. So using $200 million budget, 3% growth, and with these kind of costs being moved along, we could easily be looking at $6 million. We could be looking at $7 million. We could be looking at, and then the question becomes, if those other elements are frozen or they don't grow, that only takes us to, one conclusion. And so I think the idea that we need to monitor this, we need to make adjustments as soon as we can make the adjustments. If we can make the adjustments, I think is good advice. But if you haven't already, you might want to model this on the major elements, and you can run your scenarios. You can run whatever scenarios from the most conservative to the most optimistic, and they will, I think, produce, a certain conclusion. And I think we're going to have to cut wherever we can possibly cut. But I am concerned that even with those actions, that this is because the state and federal government is such a big part of our budget, right? What we control is so little. If that growth in that isn't reflected by the additional revenue, that comes our way, and it's a big number.
Thanks for that. And one of the things we're going to look at doing, and I took the slide out for this because it was getting too long, but every year Tammy DiLorenzo puts together a multi-year plan, and we have not used that consistently in the budget process. But talking with Nate and Tammy, I think that's something we're going to start looking at, multi-year budgets, and figure out the best way to make some of these decisions going forward. Personnel considerations. So personnel costs 35% of the county budget, about $52 million in salary, and about $77 million when you add in the benefits. So we have to be a competitive employer. We need to maintain that. But so just for your information, in 2010, there was a local law. County administrator at that point had the ability to approve positions. Filling of positions. In 2017, a local law removed that authority and put it in the hands of the department heads. If it's, as long as the position is in their budget and they have the money for it and it's vacant, they can fill it. And we've talked about maybe inserting the personnel committee or something in that, maybe make it a request later on in the year to start considering ways to do that. Comment or?
State law says it's the department head's authority to fill a position for which a budget line has already been approved. So that's why the current status quo is if the Board of Supervisors has approved a budget for a titled position and that position is vacant or becomes vacant, the department head has the authority to fill it. There, I can certainly talk with the county administrator about some other ways to address that. But that's why that local law and the rule of the board was, my understanding, why the local law was repealed. And I know that's why the rule that was in the rules of the board was modified, because state law governs on that issue.
And that said, despite what you may have heard, I have a fabulous relationship with all our department heads, and we have a very good collaborative working partnership. And I believe that in this case, I can talk to department heads and we can come to rational. So I don't need to legislate this as far as I'm concerned right now. But I am gonna start talking.
Lever, though. I would say the important lever that we're gonna have to think about for our budget is Washington County cut scores, I think 47 funded vacant positions. SUNY cut some last year to balance their budget. You have your tracking item 1 from personnel. There's about $700,000 of salaries here that are vacant. That's before fringe. And a lot of them are so critical, and a lot of them also, we only pay like 28% or something because the state aid for DSS ones, but something I think we need to really look at.
Chairman,
Yes.
if the position is not filled at the end of the year, do the money roll over? Or does the department have discretion to spend it in any other way?
As what happens at the end of the year, all salary and fringe funding is balanced against, there are always fluctuations in fringe, for example. Tammy DiLorenzo rebalances those, but all money that's not used in salary in a given year falls to the general fund when they balance the
Right.
budget. And then, but if it's, so the department head gets an approval for that position, even if it's vacant, and they put it in their budget for the following year, they get the money for it the following year.
If I could, I mean, the legislative answer is that the Board of Supervisors can amend the budget.
Right.
That's the answer.
Supervisor, sure.
Please excuse me.
Yeah.
At 1 o'clock, I have to attend.
That's it.
Thank you.
I mean, I think John has a good sense. We've always had great department heads, and I don't know that we need to do anything too draconian at this stage, but I think that the idea of everybody understanding that, the time that we're in and unchecked where it's all going. I mean, you said $77 million. I mean, put your 3 or 4% against that. Right. It's a big number. It's a big number. And I'm not arguing the number. It could be 2.5%, still a big number.
We've
That'd be-
calculated internally, I should say, Deputy Administrator, just an estimate based on an estimated increase, allowable increase for the tax cap. We can't calculate that until after the year closes in a couple months, but increases in salaries and fringe could be 2.5 million, and we can only go up 1.5 million. So right there. That's,
Right.
yeah.
Right, so that's my point.
I'll just say that she went into the detail to compensate for state aid positions, using 8% what we went up in healthcare this year and retirement and things like that.
But the 80% of our workforce is union, and all those are negotiated through union contracts. The increases that are the large part of that.
And we consider that.
2.5. Okay, next slide is, so, and we are, and I have talked to Kevin about this, looking at capital projects and road project. There have been a lot of discussion recently about bonds and how much we have to expend for bonds and if we're doing that accurately. And so we have a discussion with the county attorney, I'd like to make some comment.
Yeah, the county treasurer made some comments at this meeting about bonds and bond rates, and it's been an ongoing discussion within the county over the last few days or maybe even a couple of weeks at this point, which kind of spurred us to look structurally and legally, what are the requirements? What are we doing? What are we not doing? And what's clear is that there's a need and a process that the county has not historically done, but that good governance would require us to start doing going forward. It was too late as this concept came together to add it for a resolution request. So I'm kind of presenting it on behalf of the county administrator and myself for your consent in the hope that it can come from the floor at the next board meeting. Specifically, what I'm talking about is a capital project planning subcommittee. A capital project planning subcommittee. It would be a subcommittee of the Risk and Safety Committee because we already have the core and key department heads on that committee. The county recognizes, this is how we've written it up, where the county recognizes the importance of mitigating risks associated with county operations across the continuum of the county's governance. In keeping with the establishment of best practices, the county would recognize the importance of teamwork and the expertise of the members assigned to the Risk and Safety Committee, and that we ask that a formal subcommittee be created and tasked to convene each year in the second quarter of the calendar year to present, review, and identify capital projects across the county which would materially affect county operations in accordance with GASB and GAAP principles. What the conversation has been focused too narrowly on DPW. What the county has not historically done is put together basically a 5-year capital project plan across all of the departments. A huge part of that is going to be DPW, but it doesn't sit just on DPW's shoulders. It would include the sheriff. It would include all of our departments and what we're projecting forward for capital needs. The Risk and Safety Subcommittee would be composed of the following individuals is going to be the recommendation. The county administrator would be the chairperson for this subcommittee. It's the county administrator whose core responsibility is identifying the upcoming year, but the next 5 years of what those capital projects look like on an annual basis before the budget process starts. The deputy county administrator, the superintendent of public works, the Warren County sheriff, the county risk manager, the county planner, as well as the other members of the Risk and Safety Committee as designated by the chairperson of this subcommittee. They would be tasked with reviewing the county capital projects each year and then providing a 5-year capital project plan for the county to review that's within the county's bonding limit projections and tax cap. And that report and plan would come to this committee, the Finance Committee, and then ultimately to the Board of Supervisors no later than August 1st of each calendar year. The plan would be approved by this committee and the Board of Supervisors, and it would then become the core document, the primary document utilized for capital bonding and for the following calendar year. It would be made part of the overall county budget for that same forthcoming calendar year. So you're setting your priorities before you go into budgeting for the next calendar year on your capital projects. You're looking down the road 5 years to see what's coming up in each of those years. And then using that base document approved by this committee and the board as you go into and enter into budgeting for the next calendar year. So again, it's my understanding you can't really do we couldn't do a resolution request on this. But maybe the best is whether there's questions about it first, and if there's a consensus on the board that this would be something worth moving forward on as a full resolution at the board meeting.
Yeah, the only thing I would add to that, the other discussion we had is, our bonds, for example, we bond for multiple years. It may make more sense to just bond in the given year. If you have a good plan, you know what you're gonna spend the next year, you issue the bond to borrow the money for those projects in that given year. And you avoid paying additional interest on money that's not been expended or allocated yet or anything, so.
This makes
I think we do that.
it makes the process transparent. The taxpayer knows and sees because the committee sees it and the board approves it. And they know what are you looking to do next year? What are you doing in 2, 3, 4? What are you identifying in those future years? And as those future years roll to the present year, you're then confirming and adjusting. You're not locking yourself into a project 5 years out, but you're identifying that 5 years out, you're gonna have X, Y, and Z as priorities in those years, which then drives the budget process, which then properly results in the bonding process, rather than the bonding process starting and then you having to try to fill it in each year as you go forward. It's just kind of, from the sense of good governance, following a step-by-step approach that leaves each of you as supervisors in control and actually signing off on what is important versus what is nice and what maybe can be held off until the following year.
Yeah, I mean, you have my support on it, I can tell you that. I mean, we did, the planning office, has been conducting a, capital improvement mapping assessment program, not only for the county, but for the municipalities. And I think that this would, which, they have, done a beautiful job with. They've got the survey forms and whatever. So you may want to review what exists within the county planning office. But I like the idea of ensuring that assessment for the county is current, is up to date. Because as you point out, some things are more mature than others. Some things are, well, we know we have a need, but we're gonna need to do some exploration. We're gonna need some alternate analysis, et cetera, et cetera. Whereas other projects are more toward the project mode. You have an idea of what it's gonna cost and how you wanna fund it and so on and so forth. So I think that maintaining coming out of that assessment with a plan, an actual plan is, and it will set the stage on applying for partners, federal and state. It will help you reach out for under different funding options that to make sure you don't miss anything either. Do you maximize on that? We try to maintain an up-to-date capital plan in our community. And I will admit, it's a struggle. It takes some effort, but if it's done and done well, it can lead to some wonderful things.
Would you anticipate being able to meet in Q2 and provide a work product by budget time?
Yes, by
This year?
1 August, if we get it as a floor resolution on March 20th, we'll be able to have the meeting second quarter and start. It's gonna be more. The committee will form and there'll be multiple meetings, I'm sure.
Any other thoughts on that before we move on?
Yes, does anyone from the committee have an opposition to it or see an issue with it? Then would the members be okay knowing that this would go to as a floor resolution at the board meeting on March 20th?
would one of you be willing to bring it forward as a floor resolution?
Supervisor Bruno.
Yep. Also, absolutely.
No problem.
Okay, all right, thank you. The other thing we're gonna look at, the next one is use of fund balance. You know, we've fallen to fund balance a lot in the past. We need to make a concerted effort to look at every type of request that comes, and the budget officer has committed to taking a very close look at fund balance use this year. And with that, questions? Sorry it took so long today.
Supervisor Runyon.
What is the fund balance? Are you using months or dollar amount or percentage? How do you figure out how much you want to have in fund balance?
So the recommendation for fund balance from this New York State Comptroller is 2 months of operating expenses for the county. That's what you should have. We've come up with a factor that looks like it's called 16 or about 16.7%. I don't know if that changes every year or if it could change every year, but right now that's what it stands at. So we're
Can you
saying
clarify what 16.7% of what?
16.7% of your budget, your annual
Yeah.
budget. So for us, I believe it's $31.5 million. We are just slightly above $30 million right now. So we're below that amount. We've gone below that amount in the past, particularly back in 2008 during the fiscal crisis. We have done pretty well with fund balance over the past several years. So it's maintained, it's been pretty steady at roughly 31 to 33 million.
And the treasurer reported today that it's right now, without the year closing out yet, 1.5 under.
About 1.5 under.
So probably not something we can pull from to balance the budget.
And that's important because sales tax, you're not even seeing your large sales tax check until, 60 days, 30 to 60 days after the end of the third quarter. So you have to have the cash flow from January to that time.
And another important point on sales tax. So over the past 2 years, because of the strain on the budget, we have taken a little bit more risk in sales tax amount. The amount that we put in the budget estimating, we used to use, like if we were in budget year 25, we would go back to 23 and use the actual sales tax for 23 and add 2% to that and put it in the budget. The last couple of years, we've made the decision to use just what we estimated for the previous year, and with a little bit of an increase in that. So we're taking a little bit more risk. So we used to have $400,000, for the county. Even it was up to about 1.4 million, I think, at one time with the county. So we don't have that much anymore in additional sales tax. So we're cutting it pretty close to the line.
If you go back and take a look at, I think it's 2008 or 9, somewhere through there, and take a look at the last recession and how it impacted our sales tax, it wouldn't surprise me that you saw at least a 10% drop, maybe more.
Wow.
Oh, yeah. And I'll stand correct that. Whatever it is, we should know what that is.
Yeah.
That would have a huge impact.
Yeah.
We saw big increases right after the pandemic, and it's just like,
Other discussion on this presentation? Any public comment from the committee? Any public comment from the public? Motion to adjourn. Supervisor Bruno. Supervisor Runyon, all in favor of adjournment, please say aye. Aye. Opposed. And that